Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Lazy Trumpster here. So, Cruz is on his way over, and we are going to mess with the 79 XS400. So the last video I did was when he arrived at my house with the newly acquired bike. We unloaded it and tried to get it kicked over. So here's what we learned since then. If you recall, we only had it with firing on the right cylinder, left cylinder was not. And that's because the fuel petcock on the tank was mislabeled. So while it said it was in the on position, it was actually in the off position, so we were starving it of fuel. So what has happened since then is we charged up the battery, and so there's no issue with that. It holds a charge, the cranking amps are fine. Tank is clean, fuel is clean. We put the fuel, so apparently we stored it for a few days and nights with the fuel in the on position, not knowing this. And so before assuming we had to take apart the motor and get into that and try to find out what was going on, we turned the fuel in to the what it was labeled as the off position, which was in fact on, and tried to get it to kick over. Difference was it was behaving as though the bike was like in the off position as far as the ignition, like the kill switch and whatnot. So what was going on was, because we had left the bike, the fuel in the on position, technically on position, for several days and nights, it flooded the carbs. And so as soon as we drained the float bowls, so much fuel came out, and we kicked it and it popped off a few times. So we rolled it into the street here and fired it up, and with the fuel in the actual on position, again air quotes, it started right up and ran, and we revved it, and it was smooth and solid. And then all of a sudden right here, this nasty puddle is from when this gnarly fuel and oil mixture came spewing out of the vent hose, and it made a mess. It got everywhere, killed the bike immediately, and started to try to figure out what the heck just happened. So right here is where it came out of, that guy back there. So since then, I've taken apart the carbs, gone through them, cleaned them. They weren't that bad, but I just wanted to make sure everything was in order there. Now, while your first impression is probably blow-by in the piston rings and the cylinders, I have a different theory. See, I think because the carbs probably haven't been touched in over 40 years, and because the fuel petcock was mislabeled and we left it in the on position for several days and nights, my theory is that the fuel just kept going and running into the bowl, filling up the bowl into the carb and draining into the motor, therefore thinning out the oil. And why it didn't start spewing immediately was because the oil was cool. It was probably, I don't know, 60, 70 degree oil from just sitting. But once it heated up, the viscosity changed, it thinned out, and was thin enough for it to eject through the vent port. So, with that theory in mind, I'm going to put the gas tank back on, hook the fuel up to the carbs, drain the oil that's in it, try to get as much of that gnarly oil out, put some cheap 2050 motorcycle oil in it, and try again. If it happens again, then we know it's not the carbs. But again, my theory is that it was the carbs, that it was the fuel petcock, and that if we treat it appropriately, we shouldn't run into this issue again. So I'm going to start juggling motorcycles and get the Harley out of here. Probably even pull the 500 out. It's been a couple weeks since I fired it up, so I'll probably do that just as a practice, a normal practice, and then I'll move the 400 here front and center stage, and we'll get working on it. So Cruz just took off. He's gonna go fill up a gas can because we got this thing back together and we think we're ready to give it a shot. But some interesting things unfolded when we drained the motor. As soon as he pulled the drain plug, that entire top oil tray or oil pan right there filled to the brim with what I can describe as fuel with a splash of oil. There was so much. It was overfilled with whatever it was in the engine, was just overfilled. So we left the bike on a center stand, left the drain plug out, and sprayed carb clean in there and tried to get as much of the residual fuel / oil mixture out, and plugged it up, put 2.3 quarts in of 2050 conventional motorcycle oil. The fuel tank is back on, the battery's back in. I went through and adjusted the clutch and the clutch worm gear, ran the clutch cable a different route because it wouldn't move before, and now now it worked pretty good. It still needs a new clutch cable, but I was able to run some engine oil into the actual sleeve of the clutch cable to get it to move a little bit more freely, and I kind of tried to undo some of the bends. Also, this fuel valve pointed up before, and so because of that hard angle, the fuel line here would kink, so I was able to adjust this to get a more seamless route for the fuel there. So anyways, all things considered, we're hoping for the best here once we put that fuel in and just put enough to get the float bowls full and start it up, and just really hoping that we're not running a ton of fuel into the engine while the bike's running. I'm really hoping that because of the mislabeling of the petcock, that the previous owner as well as ourselves stored it with the fuel on, and as a result dumped tons of fuel into the engine itself, and that we somehow remedied that. Hoping for the best here though. Let's see. Alright, cruise has returned. It's the moment of truth. We're gonna fire this up, be gentle with it. We put a little bit of gas in, and hopefully it all goes well.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. God damn it. Was it a different fucking issue than last time? Test the battery. Test the plugs. Yeah, your battery's rocking right now. Clean. You did? We'll try that thing.
Oh yeah. Yes, we did. Oh yeah, I did get spark. Oh, that's you. Alright,
Check the sparkler.
oh yeah. It was kind of weak though, the spark I saw. So, in power, right?
Yeah. Yeah, ooh, fuck, shut my finger.
Yeah. It was a good spark.
Yeah.
Well, we had to bump start it, so check this out. Holy crap. Cruz was I was on the bike and he was pushing me, and we had it in second, and we were pushing it and bump starting it, God, like 12 times, and finally got it, and I just ripped it down the street to try and keep it afloat. But we've been running it back and forth now. Neighbors are gonna love me. Yeah, that That was exhausting. It is. We started at 3. It's now like almost 6 o'clock. Well, I'm beat. I think I earned a beer. I'm gonna grill some burgers and have some beers, and then go to sleep because this has been exhausting. But we got it running, so hope you guys enjoyed this. Subscribe to the channel. I like the video, so hopefully you guys like the video. And stay safe, guys.